Hello and welcome back. This is Isaac and you're watching ACT Reading Prep. Now, so far we've been looking into the humanities passages. You probably are now able to grasp what humanities is all about and what type of passages there might be, right? So we've looked into the comprehensive sides and parts of these passages and try to solve the questions accordingly, right? Although the passages might be different, what I can tell you for sure is that their question types is about the same. So what you need to do is you need to establish that pattern within yourselves to try to, go for it when the questions come up. All right. So today what we're going to do is we're going to look at the last passage type, which is called the natural sciences. Now, natural sciences, for many students, they find it very easy to solve questions about natural sciences. Now, one of the reasons being is that, natural sciences is not so, many students are aware of these natural science passages and the topics that appear within. And so it is sometimes easy for them to really grasp what the passage is talking about because they have already a background knowledge, or at least they know what the passage is about, right? I've emphasized this in the very beginning of the lectures that knowing a little bit about what you're reading will always enable you to do a much better job in solving the questions about the passage itself, because you already know what to expect, you already know what the questions might ask you. So that's the point in natural sciences, and that's how the students, most students, do much better in natural sciences than any other subjects. Now, of course, there are out there who some of you, or majority of you, may feel okay with natural science. There are some of you who think that natural sciences are harder subjects to deal with, and we'll see some of the scientific or natural science related topics or passages today and see that it is not so easy, right? You need to look into the basic knowledges or the background knowledges of the science topics that they discuss, and it'd be prudent for you to also have that literary grasp of what the passage is talking about, right? Okay, so without going further, let's get started with today's lesson. We're going to take a look at pages 186, 187 of your red book, so please go to your books and let's get started. All right, so the first passage that we're going to take a look at today, now although the description of the lecture says that it's the question types and the science passage or samples, but we're going to get started right away with the natural sciences because we all know the patterns now of the different passages and different questions, right? So let's take a look at the natural science passage today. It says this passage is adapted from the essay Were Dinosaurs Dumb by Stephen Jay Gould, right, in 1980. Now, like I said, you can pick up pretty much from within the description of the passage. Now, description of the passage already tells you, were dinosaurs dumb? Usually when you ask that question, were dinosaurs dumb, it's a rhetorical or a rhetorical question that already answers the question that it asks itself. Were dinosaurs dumb? No. That's what usually the question implies, because you wouldn't ask that question, because if you think about it, we already know, or we already somehow have this notion of dinosaurs being dumb. They were, because of the reason, because of the sheer body size that they had. I mean, for example, Brachiosaurus. Brachiosaurus was a herbivore. It was a plant-eating dinosaur, which was 20 meters, 30 meters in height, and whatever. I mean, these creatures were big, and compared to their body size, their brain size was very, very limited, right? And so therefore, we always assume that dinosaurs weren't that smart, because if they were smart, they would have been smart. They would have, they would have dominated. Well, of course, their sheer size would enable to dominate them, but they would have evolved into, right? I mean, just before the impact of the meteorite or whatever, they could have turned into, say, a smarter, right, animal, or evolved into a smarter animal, but that's not really the case, right? So therefore, when they ask you the question, were dinosaurs dumb, you're asking, you're already asking that question saying, no, they weren't, despite what we thought they were not. That's what we're talking about, right? So it already should give you a good idea of what the passage is going to talk about. Now, let's go to the first paragraph. Of course, we're going to read the first sentence and the last sentence, and turns out we have a sentence just within, so we're just going to read the entire first paragraph, because that way we could understand the entire introductory paragraph, right? So it says, the discovery of dinosaurs in the 19th century provided, or so it appeared, a quintessential case for the negative correlation of size and smarts, right? So again, we said something about size and smarts. Now, with their pea brains and the giant bodies, dinosaurs became a symbol of lumbering stupidity. And then their extinction seemed only to confirm their flawed design. Now, of course, their extinction did not come about because of their size or because of their sheer stupidity, but rather because, so it's a popular, or it's a mainstream belief that there was an impact. It's called the KT extinction, and this extinction happened about 1 million or 2-3 million years ago, some million years ago, when the meteor hit the Earth, and it annihilated everything, right? Especially the dinosaurs that were living on the surface of the Earth, right? And after that event happened, of course, there were other mammals, or the aquatic mammals, which were able to live, or which were able to continue its survival. And of course, it came onto the land and whatnot. I mean, that's the general mainstream theory that we know, right? So therefore, when we say this, we can definitely say that the first notion, or the previous notion we had about the dinosaurs, was that the dinosaurs were pretty much stupid, right? That's the idea. Now, let's go to the second paragraph. It says, dinosaurs not even granted the usual solace of a giant. Great physical prowess, dinosaurs have usually been reconstructed as slow and clumsy, right? So we're saying that dinosaurs were not even given this advantage, or given this how do you call it? Given this, it says the usual solace of a giant. So what we're talking about is that giants, right? They were powerful. They were, they were smart. They were quick, and they were agile. They had agility, and so on and on and on. I mean, these were not of what the dinosaurs were thought of, right? So, which means they were thought of as a slow and a clumsy animal, right? So again, we will continuingly say that, yes, dinosaurs, previous notion of dinosaurs was that they were stupid and they did not had that physical agility, right? Okay. Next, third paragraph. Dinosaurs have been making a strong comeback of late in this age of I'm okay, you're okay. That's the first sentence. Now, what we can tell from this is that the dinosaurs are actually making a comeback, as in people are now thinking of dinosaurs in a quite different way. And then it says, I'm okay, you're okay. Now, in this age of I'm okay and you're okay, and I guess what we mean here is that if I'm okay, then you're okay. As in, if human beings are okay, then the dinosaurs are okay as well. So meaning that, it's like a win-win situation, so to speak, right? I don't know, back in 1980s, I guess it wasn't, but again, right, that's the idea. And then, of course, we move on to the next paragraph. It says, the idea of warm-blooded dinosaurs have captured the public imagination and received a torrent of press coverage. Now, you all know that dinosaurs are a sort of a lizard, right? They are big, huge, monstrous, humongous lizards. And so, therefore, these lizards are supposed to have cold-bloodedness, or they're supposed to be cold-blooded, right? But recent findings recent discoveries suggests that dinosaurs are not cold-blooded but warm-blooded. I'm pretty sure you've seen this picture where dinosaurs were depicted as lizard-like beings which had feathers on them. I'm pretty sure you look it up in your websites, or look it up on Google. It will probably give you this image of dinosaurs with feathers all around them, kind of indicating that they're warm-blooded rather than cold-blooded, right? Okay, so anyways, it says the idea of warm-blooded dinosaurs have captured the public imagination and received a torrent of press coverage. And then it says, I don't wish to deny that flattened, minuscule head of large-bodied Stegosaurus, you know what Stegosaurus is supposed to look like, houses little brain from our subjective, top-heavy perspective, right? Like subjective and top-heavy perspective. But I do wish to assert that we should not expect more of the beast. right? So he's the writer, he or she is admitting, yes, that there are some dinosaur species which had, small brain, pea brain, compared to their body size, right? So of course that's our subjective and top-heavy perspective, but I do wish to assert that we should not expect more of the beast, right? So next. If behavioral complexity is one consequence of mental power, then we might expect to uncover among dinosaurs some signs of social behavior that demand coordination, cohesiveness, and recognition. So what we're saying is that yes, if ever dinosaurs were smart enough, they should have, or they at least should have, some kind of a mental capacity to form a social network. Like how do you say it? Herd mentality, right? So they should be, living in herds, or they should have these social relationship with each other, and so therefore coordination, cohesiveness, and recognition, right? So they probably will give you the details on that, right? And then, but the best illustration of dinosaurian capability may well be the fact that most often cited against them their demise, right? So how did they die? Why did they go off, or why were they wiped off of the face of the earth and so on? And it says the remarkable thing about dinosaurs is not that they became extinct, but they dominated the earth for so long, right? So the counter argument is that prior to their extinction, they were dominating the earth. They were the ruler of the earth, so to speak, right? And then it says, people in this criterion are scarcely worth mentioning. 5 million years, perhaps, since Australopithecus, a mere 50,000 for our own species, Homo sapiens, right? So we're talking about compared to the dinosaurs, which ruled probably millions and millions and millions of years in the earth, or on the earth, right? Human beings like Australopithecus, which is our ancestral, which goes back a little bit of our ancestral tree. Australopithecus only existed in 5 million years time, and then Homo sapiens, us, have been here for 50,000 years time. So therefore, we can't really say, right? I mean, dinosaurs are that dumb because, it's like a comparison, it's a false comparison, but again, that's what the author is saying, right? Okay. We'll move on to the question, but before we do, let's take a look at the whole passage again, right? So the whole passage gives you the idea of, yes, the dinosaurs were supposedly stupid and their bodies didn't really give them the physical prowess, but it kind of gave them the clumsy and the slow, dumb looking, right? Or dumb looking sort of physical manifestation. And then it says dinosaurs have been making a strong comeback of late, as in, yes, it's been changing, and the idea of warm-bloodedness. So the first thing is the warm-blooded dinosaurs. Warm-blooded meaning that, it wasn't really lizard. It was lizard-looking, but it wasn't lizard, so it should have had a better mental capability than the lizards had, or whatever, or cold-blooded animals would have. And then it says, yes, I don't deny the Stegosaurus's small pea brain, but that doesn't mean anything, right? And it says the behavioral complexity, there should have been behavioral complexity if the dinosaurs were smart enough, and I'm pretty sure they give you a whole lot of examples down here. And then it says the best illustration of yet their smartness is, it's not their distinct extinction, but their dominance on Earth for quite long time, and they compare that with the human beings, right? Okay, so you know now what each of the paragraph is discussing, and so let's see if we can solve the questions easy. All right, so I'm hoping that you can see the questions better. It says, in the context of the passage as a whole, it is most reasonable to infer that the phrase the Brontosaurus that wallowed in its pond a generation ago is now running on land in lines 16 and 18 mean what, right? So that's what you want to know. So Brontosaurus, that's the keyword, of course, and of course it gives you the line, so let's go back to the line and try to figure out what that means. Now remember, it's 16 to 18, so it's somewhere here, right? But you know that the second paragraph, or the third paragraph, is it? There's third paragraph gives you this idea of dinosaurs making a comeback, right? Okay, let's read that part. But let's read a sentence before, just to be clear, right? It says, most paleontologists, those people who studied the fossil records, are now willing to view them as energetic, active. So now they're willing to view them as energetic, active and capable animals. So dinosaurs are now being viewed as an energetic, active, and capable animals. The Brontosaurus that wallowed in its pond a generation ago is now running on land. So you see what this means. Now, if you think about Brontosaurus are like Brachiosauruses. They're a big, huge animal, right? What the scientists or paleontologists at least were suggesting was that these creatures could not support their body weight. So they had to, they had to support themselves inside the water. They weren't able to walk outside, or they weren't able to hold their body weight outside the land. And so it was always pictured, the Brontosauruses were always pictured in a pond or in a stream of water or in a lake, right? But now they're saying it's running on land, while pairs of males have been seen intertwining, so twining their necks about each other in elaborate sexual combat for access to females, just like the giraffe, right? Okay, so therefore, we get that idea. So what does that mean then? So let's take a look at that. So it says Brontosaurus wallowed in pond generation now running on land means what? A Brontosaurus evolved from living in the water to living on land. No, not really. We're not really talking about evolved from, because what we're saying is that we were picturing Brontosauruses living in the water, but now scientists are saying that they were more energetic and active and more capable, and so now they're living on land, meaning they, lived on land. That's what we're talking about. So this is not out of the question. B, scientists' understanding of the Brontosaurus' lifestyle has changed within the last generation. That kind of makes sense, doesn't it? And then standard illustrations of dinosaurs still inaccurately depict their lifestyles. Not really. Yes, it might have, but we are changing that. Brontosauruses eventually learned to hold up in their own weight on land. Well, probably, but not really, right? So the answer here definitely is B. We're saying that the scientists now are thinking that Brontosauruses, which were once thought to be, unable to hold their weight on land, now are saying they were very energetic, they were very active, and so they were able to run on land, right? And let alone they were able to neck fight each other. The males were able to neck fight each other to get the lady, right? So anyways, that's the idea on number 31. Easy, right? Number 32. The passage suggests that some fossil evidence about dinosaur behavior has been overlooked in the past because scientists, right? So we need to know why the scientists were overlooking on this idea of, dinosaurs not having that social or dinosaur behavior in itself, right? So we already know where to find that behavior, right? We've looked into the passages and we know where to find the dinosaur behavior, because we know that the last few paragraphs, right? So here, last few paragraphs here, especially in lines 54 or 55, it deals with the behavioral complexity, right? So fossil evidences as opposed to the social behaviors, and let's take a look at that, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to try to see where we can find that idea, but most likely what you would have to do would be just to try to just to try to go over everything together, right? Especially some of the lines here. So we're going to briefly go over these lines and see what we can find. It says, indeed we do, and it cannot be accidental, that these signs were overlooked when dinosaurs labored under the burden of a falsely imposed obtuseness. Multiple trackways have been uncovered with evidence for more than 20 animals traveling together. So we kind of see it's been overlooked. The idea of behavioral complexity of the dinosaur herd or dinosaurs were, overlooked when dinosaurs labor under the burden of a falsely imposed obtuseness, right? So what we're saying is that scientists were assuming, because they were so big and huge, right? They couldn't have had a herd. They couldn't have had, moved in herd. They couldn't have had lived in a social relationship or, making social relationship with other kinds. And that's what we're talking about here. So if that's the idea, the only reason that it was overlooked is because they had preconceived ideas about the intelligence of the dinosaurs, right? They had preconceivedness because they thought that it was too big and it was too stupid enough, or it was too, incapable of making social relationships or having some kind of a behavioral impact or behavioral complexity, right? So therefore, F will be your answer. Now, if you look at believe that mammals were not capable of social formation, no, mammals are able to form social relation. And we can't really say dinosaurs were mammals per se, right? And then H says, did not have the current data about dinosaur brain sizes. No, they did, because they were digging up these skulls, they were digging up the bones, right? And then did not have the necessary equipment to discover the social patterns of dinosaurs. Probably not, but that's not really true, right? We can tell by the fossil records, fossil evidences, that these dinosaurs were probably living together because they found the tracks alongside each other of the 20 different animals, right? So therefore, the answer will have to be F. All right, let's move on to 33. Now 33, what does the passage offer as evidence that dinosaurs may have exhibited complex behaviors? Again, the complex behavior here. What are the evidences, right? We were looking at this. We were reading this idea of the evidences behind why the animal itself was pretty much smart, or at least it had a complexity or behavioral complexity. Now it says the multiple trackways have been uncovered with evidence for more than 20 animals traveling together in parallel movement. Did some dinosaurs live in herds? Yes, at the Davenport Ranch sauropod trackway, small footprints lie in the center and larger ones at the periphery. Could it be that some dinosaurs travel much as some advanced herbivorous mammals do today, with large adults at the border sheltering juvenile in the center, like the elephants, right? That's what we're talking about. So it comes to our mind that complex behaviors were shown as an evidence of what? Like herds traveling together, right? Modern anatomical reconstructions of indicating strength and agility, fossils revealing that dinosaurs labor under severe burdens, footprints of varying sizes indicating that dinosaurs traveled with advanced herbivorous mammals, or is it multiple trackways in which the footprint size and locations indicate social order? Now here they kind of give you, or they're trying to confuse you a little bit, right? Now if you were to read it really carelessly, you might choose C as your answer because it sounds like your answer, but it's not true. It says footprints of varying size indicating that dinosaurs traveled. That's true, but they did not travel with advanced herbivorous mammals, but they were traveling as if, right, the herbivorous mammals do today, or the herbivorous mammals do today. That's what we're talking about. So that word with is wrong, right? So your answer will have to turn to be D, because that's what the fossil evidences, or that's what the footprints tell us, right? The footprints, the trackways, multiple trackways, foot sizes, the different footprint sizes tells us, right, that there was a social order. Like the adults are staying on the borders and the young staying in the center to protect the youngs, right? Okay, good. So that's the answer, right? Easy question, or easy answer at least. Let's go to 34. In the context of the passage, what does the author mean when he states that people ... are scarcely worth mentioning? Now you already know this line because you've read this line, sort of, right? Because we were talking about how, yes, the dinosaurs were extinct, or they went extinct, right? But before the extinction, or prior to the extinction, they were dominating the earth for so long. And they compared that with humans, like Australopithecus, right? They came in about 5 million years ago, and Homo sapiens, which are us, right? We came about 50,000 years ago. And so when you say people ... are scarcely worth mentioning, what are we talking about? Compared to the complex social behavior dinosaurs, human behavior seems simple. Compared to the longevity of dinosaurs, humans have been on Earth a very short time. That sounds about right. Compared to the size of dinosaurs, humans seem incredibly small. Compared to the amount of study done on dinosaurs, study of human behavior is severely lacking. You already have the answer. You didn't even have to look back, because you know that the human beings, like why people at all, because the reason people came up is because the author wanted to tell you that dinosaurs have been here for millions and millions and millions of years, as opposed to the human beings. We have been here for only 50,000 years, right? The longevity, the length of stay on Earth was in comparison, right? So therefore, the answer is G, right? Compared to that. I'm sorry about that. I think my clothes is touching the whole screen. Anyways, the answer has to be G, right? Simple as that. All right, let's move on to the next question, 35. According to the passage, what is the revisionist interpretation concerning the relationship between intelligence and the physical size? Now, if you remember previously when we were solving questions number 32 or 33, we have read this part revisionist, right? So anyways, let's go back to the revisionist and see what we can say about the body size and the physical size, right? Or the body size and the intelligence. So what we need to find would be the word revisionist. But revisionist, where would that appear, right? So we'll try to scan through. Now this is what we call scanning, right? So what you need to do is you need to scan through and try to find that word revisionist, right? Now where you can find that revisionist is right here somewhere, right? Because if I remember right, we read it right here. The revisionist, right? We found that there. So of course the warm-bloodedness and everything doesn't really mention anything about the body size and the brain size, right? So, or the intelligence in the body size. But let's read that part because revisionist appeared there. So it says, the revisionist interpretation, which I support, which the author supports, is that does not enshrine dinosaurs as paragons of intellect, right? We don't say that they are on top of their intellect, meaning they had a high intelligence. We're not saying that. But it does maintain that they were not small-brained after all. They had the right size brains for reptiles of their body size, right? That's the idea. Now, is there anything else that has to do with the revisionist? Try to scan through it. Well, maybe not, right? Okay, so maybe that's the idea. All right, let's go back then. Let's go to 35. 35 says, according to the passage, what does the revisionist interpretation, so I guess what we're looking at the right one, concerning the relationship between intelligence and physical size. And he says dinosaurs actually had relatively large brains. No, she didn't say, or the revisionist didn't say that they had the relatively large brains, the size of the brains. They said it had the right size brains, right? Dinosaurs were paragons of intellect. Not really. We're not saying that the dinosaurs were paragon, by the way, is like the high tower, like the peak, or the, you know, like the ultimate overpowering, right? Paragons of intellect, no. See, dinosaurs were relatively small brain, no, that's what we thought, right? Not the revisionist. And dinosaurs' brains were appropriately sized, that's what we read, and so therefore, D should be answered, right? Easy as that. It's very simple, right? Simple conclusions, simple answers, and you've already read that, so that would be good, right? Okay, let's move on to 36. What does the author suggest in lines 34 and 38 when he states that Stegosaurus has a small brain for our subjective, top-heavy perspective? You already know that when we say subjective, that's our, like, you know, that's our, like, our point of view. In the eyes of human beings, we think that Stegosaurus, which has a flat and small head compared to its body size, would have had a very difficult time, right? Because they were pea-brained, they were stupid. That's what we're saying. That's subjective, right? That's subjectivity. And then top-heavy perspective, meaning looking down on that, condescending point of view, right? So what are we saying then? Humans are usually smarter in their judgment of the other species? Or is it the human physical construction is deformed by the largeness of the skull? Or is it is unfair to judge other species by human standards, or not all species have a brain, a small relative to the body weight, blah, 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 blah? What would be the answer here, right? So we're talking about the perspective, our subjective and our top-heavy perspective. So the best answer will have to be, will have to be H, right? It is unfair to judge other species by human standards, all right? So that's the idea, right? Unfair to judge other species by human standards. That's what we're talking about, our subjective, top-heavy perspective. Now, J sounds like an answer as well, because it says not all species have a brain as small relative to the body weight as the human beings, but we're not really comparing the size of the human body or human, you know, brain to the other brains. We're just talking about the subjectiveness and the top-heavy perspective that we have on this issue, right? So therefore, H should be your answer. I'm sorry for dropping the pen, right? Let's move on to the next question, 37. Now, 37, the passage states that the ratio of brain weight to body weight in larger animals as compared to the smaller animals is what, right? That's what we want to find out. So, of course, if you think about elephants and if you think about rats, right? If you compare their body sizes and the ratio of their body sizes, elephants do have a very big brain compared to the rat's brain, right? But the ratio kind of defines it as elephants having a much smaller brain than the rats do have. So what are we saying there, right? So we'll have to read that part that says the brain weight to the weight of the larger animals. Where would you find that idea? Let's go back to the passage. Where would you find that idea? Now here it's just the extinction part of it, so you won't find it. Here it's the behavioral complexities, or so like the herd or the herd mentality of the dinosaurs. So that's not where we're gonna find. So maybe the idea is here because we're talking about Stegosaurus and its pea brain compared to the body size. So let's see if we can find it. It says, first of all, we'll read from here. Large animals have relatively smaller brains than related small animals. That's what we're saying, and that's right there. It says the correlation of the brain size with body size among kindred animals, like similar kinds, all reptiles and all mammals, for example, is remarkably regular. As we move from small to large animals, from mice to elephants or small lizards to Komodo dragons, brain size increases, but not so fast as body size. In other words, bodies grow faster than brains, and the larger animals have low ratios of brain weight to body weight. In fact, brains grow only about 2/3 as fast as the bodies, right? So that's what we're talking about. You've already got the idea, I'm hoping, right? Well, let's take a look at 36. So what, 37. So what is it? Is it higher, the ratio? So what the ratio we're asking is, ratio of the brain weight to the body weight in larger animals as compared to the smaller animals is what? Is it higher? Is it lower? Is it the same? Or is it overestimated, right? We know that the brain weight to the body weight in larger animals, the ratio, is it high or ratio low? The ratio, of course, is lower, right? Why is that? Why do we call the ratio lower? Because I've just told you this example or the analogy to the mice and the elephant, right? So if you look, I don't know how to draw an elephant. I'm a terrible, terrible painter. I'm a terrible drawer, right? So therefore, if you have the elephant, right? Let's say the elephant, I'll just put it into a small, circles. That might not do. Let me just erase that a little bit and just to give you a better view of, right? So what we're saying is that elephants, right? I'm gonna over exaggerate it a little bit so that you can understand it in a easier sense, all right? Let me over exaggerate it a little bit, and here we go. So small animals, this is what we call elephant, right? Elephant, and this is mice. This is not drawn to scale, of course, right? That's what we're talking about. Compared to the brain size, of course, brain size in the larger animals is bigger, right? That's always bigger, right? And that's smaller, of course. But if you compare that with the body sizes, right? The body size, right? Compared with the body size is always, right? It's bigger, of course, compared to the brain size, right? Here, it's pretty much set because there is no, like a crazy ratio differences between the brain size and the body size. So that's what we're talking about. So the brain weight to the body weight, right? Brain weight to the body weight always will be lower. You get the idea, right? Brain weight to the body weight will always be lower. So brain weight to the body weight would always be lower, right? If that's the brain and if that's the body, right? It will always be lower. That's what we're talking about. In the small animals as well, that's almost always the case, right? But in the larger animals, it's even more so, right? That's why we have to say it's lower. You get the idea, right? So it's the brain weight to the weight of the larger animals, body weight of the larger animals. So is it lower? Is it higher? It's lower. If it's higher, then you have a bigger head than your body, right? Okay, so let's move on to the next question, 38. According to the passage, which of the following correctly states the relationship of brain size to their body size? Again, the same thing. So which of the following correctly states the relationship of the brain size to the body size, right? Brain size to the body size. Let's read the questions first because we think that we already know this, right? Because you've read this, and so I'm pretty sure you have a good idea of what the question or what the answer should be. Let's take a look at F. The brain grows at 2/3 the rate of body growth. Have we read that? I think we've read that, right? The brain grows at 2/3 the rate of body growth. I think that's true because we said that body grows faster than the brain, right? 2/3 at a time. So therefore, that's something that we read. We heard that. We read that when we were solving this question, right? Okay. At maturity, the brain weighs an average of 1/3 of the body weight. Well, that's true. That's kind of true, but not 1/3. It's 2/3, right? I mean, yeah, 1/3 of the brain, of course. And then H, larger animals, so let me just circle that. Larger animals are not consistently less intelligent than smaller animals. We're not talking about that. Brain size is independent of body sizes. Well, not really, right? And we have something called the ratios, right? I mean, for God's sakes, we have what we call golden ratios, right? So therefore, the answer will either have to be F or G, but let's try to find that answer within the question of the brain size and the body size, right? We read that part, but we're going to read it again just for the sake of clarity, right? So here we said, right here, right? So we said Komodo dragons, and it says brain sizes increases, but not so fast as body size. In other words, bodies grow faster than brains, and larger animals have low ratios, we found that already, brain weight to the body weight. Now, in fact, brains grow only about 2/3 as fast as the bodies, meaning that brains will grow at a one-third time, or 1/3 the ratio of the body weight, right? But that doesn't say anything about that particular period in time, right? It just says that the brains grow only about 2/3 the rate, 2/3 as fast as the bodies grow. So if given that idea, what would be your answer, right? So which one should be your answer? Now, brain grows 2/3 the rate of the body growth. That's true. That's what we read. At maturity, the brain weighs an average of 1/3 of body weight. That's not true, right? Although brain might, right? Brain might, but it's just the ratio in which it grows, right? If you think this another way, it means that the brain grows at a 1/3 rate compared to the body weight. That doesn't mean that when at maturity, when the thing is grown, when let's say elephant is grown, the brain weighs about 1/3 of the body weight, right? That's not true. If it's 1/3, we're talking about, let's say, if drawn to scale, let's say these are same ratio, right? So when it's fully grown, the animal should have 2 as a body and 1 as a head, and that's just too big, right? Even elephants don't have a head size as big as that, right? So therefore, that's not true. So your answer will have to be brain grows at 2/3 the rate of the body growth, right? That's something that we read as we were reading, or as we were reading for the question, or for the answers, when we were reading that for number 37, all right? Let's move on to the next question. The author states that the best illustration of dinosaurs' capability is their dominance of the earth for what? How long? Right? I mean, you can say that, you can definitely tell it has to be millions and millions of years ago. If you have the background knowledge, you would choose 100 million years right away, because that's how long. Like Triassic, you have Jurassic. If you think about all these epochs and eras, right? You can definitely say it's more than 100 million years, or more than, of course, 100 million years, right? 70 million, 5 million, 100,000 million, not 100,000 million, 100,000 years, not really true, because 100,000 years is probably the life, it's probably how long human beings have been here, right? 5 million years, that's Australopithecus, no. 70 million, that's probably, and 100 million, probably. So to just make sure, right? To make sure, let's find out how long they've been there, or how long humans have been there. We know that it should be somewhere here, right? Why? Because we're talking about extinction, and we compare that to the human beings, right? It says, dinosaurs held sway for 100 million years, while mammals all the while lived as small animals in the interstices of the world. After 70 million years on top, we mammals have an excellent track record. So we're talking about 100 million years as dinosaurs, right? Dinos. And 70 million for mammals, right? Mams. And 5 million for Australopithecus, and 50,000 for Homo sapiens, right? All right, so you get the idea. So what's your answer then? Dinosaurs have been here around 100 million years, right? 100 million years. All right, so that's the idea, and I'm hoping that you get that right away, because you have to think about all these epochs, right? And you probably get this. If you're a dinosaur connoisseur, right, you should know that this is, or at least you are a fanatic of this dinosaur studies and related paleontology, then you should know that it's 100 million years. Think back to your elementary years, right? When you were like 9 or 10, I'm pretty sure you were crazy about dinosaurs. Although I wasn't one of those people, or one of those kids who were interested in dinosaurs. I wasn't really, because I did not like the idea that dinosaurs were lizards, big lizards. I hate, for some reason, I don't have a fondness towards lizards, snakes, or any reptilian creatures for that matter. All right. Just to give you a side story, when I was studying in school, I had to dissect a frog that was acceptable, perfectly acceptable back then, and I hated it. I mean, frogs are not really reptilian by nature. They are amphibians, but still, they are somehow related, and I really hated the idea. And so, ever since before then, I really hated the idea of lizards, and so dinosaur was not my thing. But I'm pretty sure you were one of those kids who loved dinosaurs, right? Okay. So anyways, 100 million years. And the last question, 40. As it is used in line 82, the term Australopithecus, of course, this human order, right? Australopithecus, Australopithecus, and you have the Cro-Magnons, and you have the Homo sapiens. Australopithecus was more of an ape-looking human beings. Ape-looking meaning like they had a shorter stature, they had bigger heads. They had, not bigger heads, but bigger structures of the head, and they weren't able to speak. They were probably able to make sounds, but they weren't able to speak. Their body was covered in hair, and they were not perfectly erect, but they were a little bit slouched, forward, right? Just like apes do. And that's Australopithecus. And after Australopithecus, or, at about the same time Australopithecus, there came Cro-Magnons. Cro-Magnons were or Cro-Magnons, for example. Cro-Magnons or Cro-Magnons were the species that came after or came within, right? I mean, if you think about it, the evolution of human beings was quite interesting as well. There was one species of human being, there's another species of human being, there are another species of human beings, right? There was a competition, strongest survives, right? Strong fittest, of the survival of the fittest, and so therefore that went that way, and then we have the Homo sapiens. So when we say Australopithecus, what does that mean? Of course, it has nothing to do with how the human beings evolved or whatnot, but we're talking about how long the dinosaurs were here, right? As compared to the Australopithecus, right? So the term Australopithecus most nearly means the last of dinosaurs, which became extinct 5 million years ago. No, I mean, if you've taken anthropology, or at least if you've taken social sciences, right, you know that Australopithecus is not a last of dinosaurs, right? The first Homo sapiens who appeared on Earth 50,000 years ago, not really. We're talking about Australopithecus as in the ape-looking human beings, or ape-looking ancestors, right? Androgenes, right? An early versions of humankind, but a different species, and a physically larger species of human with a much smaller brain. Now, I mean, this and this could be our answer, right? So just to clarify, let's take a look at that paragraph and see what could be our answer. So here, Australopithecus, right? So it says, people on this criterion are scarcely worth mentioning. 5 million years perhaps since Australopithecus, a mere 50,000 for our own species, Homo sapiens. Try the ultimate test within our system of values. Do you know anyone who would wager a substantial sum, even at favorable odds, on the proposition that Homo sapiens will last longer than Brontosauruses, right? So it doesn't tell you much of what the Australopithecus are supposed to be, right? But you should know this already, right? So what should be your answer here? The answer, of course, either H or J, but which one? Of course, the H. Why is that? Because physically larger species of human with a much smaller brain, that is not actually mentioned within the passage. Now, according to the finds that we have today, the brain size didn't really change that much from Australopithecus to Cro-Magnons or Cro-Magnons to human beings, Homo sapiens. It didn't change too much. It's just that the shape of the skull had changed and a little bit of differences within the body or the brain weights, right? And so therefore, that's not true, but what we're talking about is the early version of humankind, but a different species, right? That's what we're talking about. You know this. I mean, you should know this already from the term Australopithecus, and then 50 million years ago, and then you have the Homo sapiens, right? So therefore, H should be your answer. I guess number 40 is more of a background knowledge you should have, because it doesn't really, the passage itself does not really include, right? It doesn't really include what Australopithecus is, and so therefore, it would be prudent for you to know a little bit of your ancestry, so to speak, or at least a little bit of the history of how human beings have evolved. All right? So anyways, that's it for today. So natural sciences, again, as you've seen in number 40 as well as the other questions, it would be easy for you to answer the questions if you had the background knowledge, right, that concerns the topic itself. All right? Reading skills also important, but background knowledge is also equally important. All right? Okay. So I'll see you next time with more of the natural sciences, and we're probably going to take a look at a much harder passage next time. And so try to, and just to give you a tip, I want you to have a very broad and a very shallow knowledge of everything about science, and as well as social sciences and humanities and prose fiction. All right? Keep that up. All right. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.